Did SpaceX and Starlink just do a rug pull on every mobile user in Australia? Until yesterday, I was able to use my modified standard Starlink unit for in-motion use anywhere in Australia. For me, it was absolutely awesome because it meant that anywhere on the station, a location where there is no other terrestrial communication systems, I was able to be connected to the outside world all the time. That meant that I could be driving along and I could receive a phone call, answer it, and stay in communication with everyone. A great practical example of how this has helped us was a few months ago when over at the Windidda job and I was putting in access tracks, the spindle hub fell off the grader. Because I had my vehicle with the Starlink there, I was able to take photos, send them off to the mechanic, and the parts were on their way before I'd even gotten back to the homestead, 3.5 hours away. So then once we got the parts up here and we were ready to go for the installation, when we're out on site and we had a few questions about the specifics of how we should be putting in a certain O-ring or a tip or a trick, we were able to call up the mechanic. We were able to take photos. We could ask, how is the best way that we should be doing this? Does this look right? And we were able to have live, on the spot assistance. And that saved us thousands of dollars of not having to get someone to come out to repair it. We were able to do it ourselves with a little bit of tech support. And that's where one of the biggest things that out here with the good communications is that it's decreasing that distance from help. A lot of the time it can just be solved through a phone call instead of someone having to come out and physically be on site. Now, SpaceX have just disabled in-motion use for people unless you jump through the hoops of the massive paywall to get some hardware which is not readily available yet in Australia. You now need to get a high-performance flat mount dish to be allowed to use the roaming function. Comes in at $3,870 plus delivery. The lead time for some of this hardware is up to 6 weeks for someone where I am. And as you can see, I am effectively in the middle of nowhere. As opposed to these units which were $499 and you just had to put them into your own bracket. Now this doesn't detract from the fact that you can still use these when you pull up and stop and prop for your comms. It takes about 2.5 minutes for it to come back online and realize that you're not moving, which is still pretty good. I'd been advocating for a long time to everyone that I knew that for safety purposes, you should grab yourself a Starlink unit, whack it on your vehicle that you drive every day, because you've got better and more reliable communications than you would have if you were even inside cell service. Now, they're just effectively a glorified sat phone, except a sat phone will let you know that you've got a phone call coming in while you're in motion, and then you can stop. This system now is a stop and prop only. For us, the Starlink was really good for our interim phase of our network. What we're building here on the station is a terrestrial fixed wireless network to enable us to have surveillance at our water points so we can maintain a high level of animal welfare standards. Plus, you have internet connectivity. But our entire system isn't reliant on having internet. You can be on the internal network and access all of the cameras and check on the livestock, non-reliant on the link to the sky. So that's us covering off on the mobile changes that we've had with Starlink, but we can jump into a little bit about why I still use the NBN connection at the homestead. The NBN connection at the homestead advertises 12 and 5, so 12 megabytes down, 5 megabytes upload. I actually get a bit over 3 times that. I get a minimum of 40 meg down. On my Starlink at home, I'm getting around 220 meg down and 30 meg up. The latencies are different, but for the majority of users out here, unless you're looking into getting into competitive online gaming, and Starlink certainly isn't quite there yet, you're going to be able to be saving yourself up to $100 a month just by using the NBN network. The advantages of the Starlink are that you can install it yourself and it's quick and easy. But with the NBN, a technician will install it at no cost to you for the satellite connections. Recently, we had a period in excess of 3 hours where Starlink was completely non-responsive. Our network had a failover system which brings it back to the NBN. At the moment, as we speak, the NBN Co is rolling out another phase of their fixed wireless network, which is going to impact somewhere around 100,000 additional households across Australia, giving them lower latency, high capacity internet without having to rely on the satellite networks. And as they take more customers off the satellite networks, it's going to make it better for those that are still remaining on it, those that have no other option for their internet. The NBN is good enough for streaming in reasonable quality, but then you've got some data limits. They've recently lifted those limits to 300 gig, and they are looking at bringing in an unlimited style plan. Now, the reliability on the NBN network actually comes down to the service providers. And so you can't just tar it all as the NBN is terrible, because there are service providers which are not up to par. They're charging a premium price for a poor delivery of service. There's a couple of networks that are out doing that. There are better service providers if you are getting terrible service. So while it is disappointing that I can't use this in motion anymore, there are other players coming into the game. So I'm standing in an area where there is no other radio communications to interfere with it. So I'm just about in the best position ever to test out new equipment and technologies. We are already getting unparalleled speeds and connectivity through our fixed wireless network. I'm excited to see what happens in the low Earth orbit network. And if anyone wants to throw some different equipment at me to test out, I'm more than happy to. Starlink has the first market advantage, but these other players are coming into it with a lower risk of investment because they know that it works. And they just need to apply themselves in a slightly different way, have a bit of a different marketing model. And I'm sure that we're going to see a lot of change in this part of the market. With talk of SpaceX coming down to mobile only devices, I'm just wondering if it's going to be a free service or if they're going to surprise you with an additional charge to be allowed to use that. Because so far, SpaceX has been pretty good at just slowly creeping up the price of the service. So that kind of wraps it up. For us, we have both of them and we can justify that expense because that allows us to be remote but not isolated. So make sure that you throw us a thumbs up if you reckon that this was valuable to you, or subscribe to the channel if you want to find out more about how I've spread the internet across our station, which is the size of a small European nation. And if you want a little bit of a teaser for that now, jump onto an article that I did a few months ago with the girls from Generation Ag, which is worth having a bit of a look just to see a bit of an overview of what we're achieving, but it doesn't actually go into the technical details of what we're using to get the internet to our water points. So you'll have to subscribe and stick around if you want to find out how we're doing this.